We will roleplay 2 short scenarios that model specific evidence-based tools when you encounter both COVID-19 vaccine hesitant and resistant parents. Our approach draws from best practices in recommending other pediatric vaccines, current research on what parents want to hear from their doctors about COVID-19 vaccination, and motivational interviewing. The first scenario features a hesitant parent who is concerned about how quickly the vaccine was developed and potential long-term side effects. In the second, the conversation centers around a more resistant parent who doesn't see a need for vaccinating because she believes COVID-19 doesn't cause serious disease in children and the vaccine may have adverse effects. In both conversations, the provider's response centers on 1, making a strong recommendation for the vaccine, 2, drawing on principles of motivational interviewing to identify discrepancies in the parents' motivations to vaccinate and not vaccinate their children, 3, working through the parents' ambivalence by validating their concerns, addressing knowledge gaps, and reinforcing positive motivations for vaccination, including by sharing the pediatrician's own vaccine story, and 4, rolling with resistance. Okay. Ezra looks great. And before we wrap up, I'd like to talk a little bit about the COVID-19 vaccine. I see Ezra hasn't been vaccinated against COVID, and our office strongly recommends that our patients do get vaccinated against COVID to protect them and their families. In fact, we can give Ezra the vaccine here in clinic today. What are your thoughts on getting your child vaccinated today?
Honestly, I'm not sure yet. We just haven't decided yet.
I want you to know that many parents feel the exact same way as you do, and their reasons for being undecided vary widely. Would you mind sharing with me what's on your mind about getting the vaccine?
Well, I'm just a little nervous. The vaccine is so new and we don't know how it's going to affect the kids in long term. Everyone is saying that it was made too fast and we just don't know what's going to happen to kids who get it in like 10 years from now. But I also want to keep my kids safe. I heard on the news that some kids get sick from COVID and maybe even end up in the hospital. I don't know. I'm just really conflicted about this.
I can understand your conflict. On the one hand, you feel like there's not enough information out there about the long-term effects of the vaccine. And on the other hand, you want to keep your child safe here and now, which the vaccine would do. Would it be okay with you if I shared some information about what we do know about the vaccine and see if I can address some of your concerns?
Yeah, sure.
Great, thank you. So scientists have been doing research on the development of vaccines for a long time, even before the pandemic started, including the vaccine that we're using against COVID. And it may seem like the COVID vaccine was developed quickly, but it's actually taken scientists over 10 years to develop this specific type of vaccine. And the COVID-19 vaccine was tested and approved by the FDA in the same way that all other vaccines have been tested. And you had some concerns about some of the long-term effects of the COVID vaccine, and I'd like to address some of those if you don't mind. We know from other vaccine research that when side effects do happen, they usually happen shortly after the vaccine is administered and not years later. And this is why we hold on to children 15 to 20 minutes after the vaccine is administered to monitor them for side effects. And what we're finding is the most common side effect is some local redness and irritation at the injection site that actually goes away with time. What are your thoughts about this information?
Well, it's good to hear this information coming from a doctor. There's so much information on the internet saying that the vaccine hasn't been tested at all and that no one even knows the long-term effects.
It can be hard to make a decision when you're getting information from so many different resources, including the internet. And I want to be there to help and support you in any way that I can. And ultimately, whether you vaccinate your children or not is your decision. I do want to share with you that I did get my child vaccinated as soon as it was available. I've also seen many kids get very sick with COVID infection, and some even require hospitalization. And all that to say is our role as the physician is to just educate families as much as we can about the COVID-19 vaccine so that you can make the best and safest decision for your child and your family.
That's reassuring to hear. I feel more confident about vaccinating Ezra after learning about the side effects happen right away and that you also had your kids vaccinated. But I do have to discuss this with my husband.
Of course, you are not alone in this. And please feel free to call the office with any questions or concerns that you may have. And I want to give you this pamphlet with facts about the COVID-19 vaccine. There's also a list of local clinics, walk-in clinics, that you can go in and get Ezra vaccinated without even an appointment, so you won't even have to necessarily come back to clinic. I'll also follow up with you at our next appointment about the vaccine.
Thank you.
Okay. Ezra looks great. And before we wrap up, I'd like to talk a little bit about the COVID-19 vaccine. I see Ezra hasn't been vaccinated against COVID, and our office strongly recommends that our patients do get vaccinated against COVID to protect them and their families. In fact, we can give Ezra the vaccine here in clinic today. What are your thoughts on getting your child vaccinated today?
No, absolutely not. I am not getting my kid vaccinated.
Okay. I want you to know, first and foremost, that this is your decision, and I respect that. And parents have all different reasons for vaccinating and not vaccinating their children. Would you be able to share with me what are some of your concerns about vaccinating Ezra?
I just don't think that kids can really get sick from COVID, and from what I've seen, the vaccine's given them all types of heart problems. I just don't want that to happen to my child.
Okay, I want to just make sure I understand your concerns. I think I heard you say that you're not that worried about the risk of COVID in your children, but you are concerned about some of the risks and side effects associated with the COVID-19 vaccine. Is that right? Would you be able to tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, COVID isn't as a big deal as everyone makes it seem. I know tons of people who've gotten it, and they say it's just like a cold. I'm sure you think I don't care about my kids, but I just want them to be healthy. And from what I hear, the vaccine is making them sick.
Okay, I want to reassure you that I acknowledge and understand how much you love your children and how much you want to protect them. And I want to do the same. I hear you saying how much you want to protect Ezra, but you fear that the COVID-19 vaccine may actually be harmful to him. Does that sum up how you're feeling?
Yeah, pretty much.
So we've heard very similar concerns from other parents, and as a parent myself, I can understand that this is a very challenging decision to make. There are actually many pediatricians in this office who took some time to vaccinate their children until they felt that they understood the vaccine enough, and they eventually did it. It's understandable that you want to think through this decision carefully. If you would allow me to ask you a related question, if you were to vaccinate Ezra in the future, what might your reasons be?
I guess I really want to know that it worked to keep my kids safe, and that there wouldn't be any major side effects, and that it wouldn't get them sick.
I hear you. On the one hand, you're not so sure that a COVID infection would make Ezra really sick, but you're concerned that the vaccine could affect his heart. And on the other hand, you might consider the vaccine if you had reassurance that it would protect Ezra. Would it be okay with you if I shared some information about what we do know about the vaccine?
Sure.
You're right that some kids do have side effects from the vaccine, and most of these are very mild. The most common mild side effect that we're seeing is some local redness and irritation at the injection site that goes away shortly after the injection. In rarer cases, we are seeing some severe adverse effects of the COVID-19 vaccine, including myocarditis, which is very rare. In one study that included 8 million vaccinated children, only 11 were diagnosed with myocarditis, making it exceedingly rare. You're also right that the COVID-19 vaccine doesn't prevent us from contracting the virus, but it does prevent us from getting severely sick and can prevent us from getting hospitalized. And that's the number one reason why I got my own child vaccinated. All this to say that I respect any decision that you end up making. Does all of that make sense? And do you have any further thoughts or concerns about any of the information that I've shared with you today?
No, not right now.
If you want to talk about this further, you can always feel free to call the office at a later time. And I want to give you this pamphlet with information about the COVID-19 vaccine, and it has other resources in there that we trust. And I'll make sure to circle back with you about the COVID-19 vaccine at our next visit.
Thanks.